What if the salvation of the planet rested on something as ethereal as beauty? For many, beauty is superficial, something saved for the arts or fashion. But for Fyodor Dostoevsky, it was the essence of salvation. In a world afflicted by existential crises where faith is eroded and cynicism dominates, he declared something that sounds nearly paradoxical. Beauty will save the world. But what did he mean by that? How can something so intangible be the remedy to human suffering? Dostoevsky was no stranger to pain. He understood it personally, just as he knew the salvation that beauty might provide. This term, far from being a mere tribute to aesthetics, expresses a concept of beauty that transcends appearance, reaching the human soul in its fight against nihilism. The saying, "Beauty will save the world," is not the consequence of naive optimism. It originates from the life of Fyodor Dostoevsky, a man who experienced the depths of misery and turned his tragedies into fuel for his work. Born in 1821 in Russia, Dostoevsky was up in an environment of Orthodox Christian religion. His life, defined by early losses, left profound scars. The death of his mother when he was just 15 and, shortly after, the savage murder of his father, drove him into inner anguish. This rocky beginning was the forerunner to a life full of hardships. Dostoevsky, too, suffered from epileptic convulsions, which not only damaged his physically but also presented him with the frailty of human existence. However, it was in 1849 that his life changed forever. Sentenced to death for supposed revolutionary activities against the Tsarist authority, he underwent the psychological anguish of a simulated execution. At the last moment, his sentence was commuted to forced labor in Siberia, where he spent 4 years living among criminals, facing harsh cold and malnutrition. Yet, this experience did not break him. It altered him. When he returned to Russia, Dostoevsky was no longer the same. His writings, formerly centered on social reasons, now tackled more darker and deeper themes: suffering, faith, nihilism, and the possibility of redemption. It was in this setting that The Idiot evolved, where the character Prince Mishkin, an epitome of purity and kindness, carries the vision that beauty could transcend human disorder. The word that defied decades did not come from a thinker indifferent to grief, but from someone who, in the midst of darkness, found in beauty a reflection of divine salvation. For Dostoevsky, beauty was not merely an aesthetic quality, but a transcendent power capable of reconciling the riddles of the human soul. He thought that true beauty was founded in the sublime and the spiritual, raising the individual above despair and connecting them to the divine. In his words, beauty is mysterious and terrible at the same time. God and the devil fight there, and the battlefield is the heart of man. This vision is powerfully present in The Idiot, where Prince Mishkin, hailed as a modern Christ, epitomizes goodness in a world poisoned by cynicism and greed. Mishkin represents spiritual beauty but also vulnerability. He challenges the practical logic of the world by maintaining that compassion and purity can triumph against corruption and nihilism. However, his benevolence is not celebrated. It is generally misinterpreted and rejected. This contrast illustrates the universal battle between the aspiration for transcendence and the destructive inclinations of the human ego. Dostoevsky also regarded beauty as an antidote to the nihilism that threatened his era. Through his characters and plots, he tackled the struggle between existential emptiness and the yearning for significance. Like Nietzsche, who understood the redemptive power of art, Dostoevsky regarded beauty as a response to the moral breakdown of society. However, while Nietzsche strove to overthrow established morality, Dostoevsky discovered in beauty a path to religion and redemption. More than simply dazzling aesthetics, Dostoevsky's idea of beauty reflects the human ability for compassion and transformation. It does not erase suffering but integrates it, indicating that even in the darkest situations, there is something that can touch the heart and revive hope. As he implies, beauty is not something we possess, but something that possesses us, moving us beyond ourselves toward the timeless. Dostoevsky, with his profound insight into human nature, identified difficulties that continue to challenge modern civilization. His vision of beauty, firmly based in transcendence, contrasts strikingly with the superficiality of contemporary aesthetics. In a society inundated with meticulously produced images on social media, beauty is often reduced to an instrument of external affirmation, losing its link with the sublime. But what would Dostoevsky think about today's society? For him, true beauty is not something that simply pleases the sight, but something that lifts the soul. This distinction is significant. While modern aesthetics sometimes foster fears and consumerism, the beauty Dostoevsky espoused offers a chance to overcome existential emptiness. Consider the moments of crisis that have defined recent years. During the epidemic, for example, many found solace in kinds of beauty that transcend the material. A song that provided hope, a lyric that spoke of perseverance, or a work of art that mirrored the chaos and redemption of the human condition. These examples illustrate exactly the kind of beauty Dostoevsky believed could save the world, one that reaches the essence of who we are and reminds us of what is eternal. In contrast, the feverish desire for digital approbation often disconnects us from our fundamental humanity. The emotional impact of social media, with its relentless concentration on status and appearance, mimics the nihilism that Dostoevsky so feared. He saw alienation and despair as signs of a culture that had forgotten how to comprehend the transcendent. However, there is still room to recover true beauty. The simplicity of a moment of genuine human connection, the power of a great literature, or the expanse of a starry sky might renew the sense of surprise that Dostoevsky considered as important. As he warned, beauty is a powerful weapon, both to redeem and to corrupt. It is up to us to decide how we will use it. If beauty, as Dostoevsky implies, is capable of saving the world, where is it in our daily lives? We don't need to look to great monuments or artistic marvels to find the beauty he describes. It can be observed in the tiniest and frequently forgotten details. Imagine the relief of a genuine chat with a good friend, or the warmth of a hug in a moment of loss. These seemingly modest gestures contain the capacity to restore our trust in humanity. Dostoevsky thought that beauty was closely linked to compassion and kindness, actions that form bridges where chasms had existed. Furthermore, contemplation can be a method for rediscovering beauty. A solitary walk through nature, watching the symmetry of a flower or the movement of clouds, can reconnect even the most disillusioned souls with something larger. For Dostoevsky, these encounters were not merely sensual pleasures, but moments of spiritual transcendence. However, practicing beauty needs deliberate effort. In a world that continuously pulls us toward noise, it is vital to build an attentive and sensitive perspective. This involves separating from the distractions that drag us away from what is essential and rediscovering what actually counts. Dostoevsky's message is clear. Beauty does not eradicate suffering, but it helps us face it with bravery and hope. If we allow it to touch us, even in the most trying moments, we can find a point of light that illuminates the road. After all, as he well knew, beauty is where we identify it, inside and beyond ourselves. Dostoevsky did not speak about beauty as an idealized abstraction, but as a visceral force that comes from the clash between suffering and transcendence. His famous saying, "Beauty will save the world," is not merely a philosophical challenge but an invitation to reflection. He urges us to recognize beauty as a universal and redeeming force, even in the most terrible situations. When Dostoevsky built characters like Prince Mishkin, he was not pursuing perfection, but humanity. Mishkin is gentle but frail, hopeful but vulnerable, He depicts the continual effort within each of us to balance the light and darkness that dwell inside. Like Mishkin, we are called to pursue beauty, not as a retreat from reality, but as a force that transforms it. Perhaps Dostoevsky anticipated something we frequently ignore. Beauty is essentially a kind of resistance. It fights the cynicism, indifference, and nihilism that threaten to empty our lives of meaning, even now. Despite our modern crises, social, emotional, and spiritual, Dostoevsky's message remains more pertinent than ever. In the midst of turmoil, beauty remains a common ground for salvation. Thread connecting us to what is timeless is not simply a poetic feeling, but a call to action, an invitation to engage with the world in a way that enriches it with more goodness, depth, and purpose. It does not inspire us to retreat from the chaos of reality, but rather to reconstruct, to reshape, to infuse our surrounds with a feeling of purpose and value. And thus, the question that hovers in the air is both simple and profound. Where do you discover beauty today? Perhaps, as Dostoevsky believed, beauty is always within reach, waiting not to be created, but merely to be seen, acknowledged, and accepted. Choosing to notice beauty is not only an act of passive observation, it is the first step toward transformation. It has the capacity to save not only the globe, but also ourselves. But if beauty, as Dostoevsky says, contains the potential to redeem and repair, then where exactly does it exist in our daily lives? We frequently equate beauty with grandeur, the awe-inspiring architecture of a church, the brightness of a timeless painting, or the majesty of a breathtaking landscape. But is that all there is? Do we need to search in distant locations or inside the pages of history to meet the beauty he speaks about? No. Beauty resides in the smallest, often unnoticed parts of our regular existence. It is present in the quiet moments, in the wordless gestures, in the simplicity of human connection. Imagine the peace found in a meaningful chat with a dear friend, the way understanding and empathy can bridge the deepest of divisions. Consider the gentle reassurance of a warm embrace when loss becomes overwhelming, a gesture so basic yet strong enough to restore our confidence in humanity. Beauty flourishes in these moments, embedded in acts of generosity, in the compassion we provide to one another, in the love that links us together even in the most terrible situations. For Dostoevsky, beauty was not merely an aesthetic pleasure, but something intrinsically tied to the human spirit. He saw it as a power that comes from our battles, from our confrontation with suffering. It is in our ability to see beyond sorrow, to identify something profound in situations of despair, that true beauty is exposed. Furthermore, contemplation can be a method to rediscovering beauty, a way to reconnect with something higher than ourselves. A silent walk through nature, where the rustling leaves weave an unspoken song, or gazing at the delicate symmetry of a flower, realizing how effortlessly perfection occurs in the smallest of things, can be a reminder of the harmony hidden in the cosmos. Even watching clouds glide across the sky, ever-changing yet continuous, can elicit a sense of wonder, an understanding that we are part of something enormous, something truly meaningful. These encounters are not only sensory pleasures, they are glimpses of spiritual transcendence. They remind us that beauty does not need to be sought in foreign places. It is here, woven into the fabric of reality, ready to be recognized. However, practicing beauty needs deliberate effort. In a world inundated with noise, distractions, and the unrelenting pace of modern life, it is easy to grow blind to the fundamental. To fully appreciate beauty, we must cultivate an attentive and sensitive look, one that is willing to pause, to observe, to interact with the current moment. This involves separating from the constant influx of superficial diversions, from the things that drive us away from what is meaningful, and rediscovering what genuinely counts. Dostoevsky's message is clear. beauty does not eliminate misery. It does not eradicate adversity or insulate us from grief, but it does provide us a method to endure, a means to face life's hardships with courage, with hope, with tenacity. It permits us to see brightness even in the darkest of circumstances, to understand that there is something worth clinging on to, something worth fighting for. In the end, beauty is not just about what we see, it is about what we acknowledge. It is both inside and outside of us, in the environment we shape and in the hearts we touch. Dostoevsky did not speak about beauty as an idealized, untouchable concept. He regarded it as something raw and genuine, something that comes from the tension between pain and grace. It is not distant. It is here. It is now. It is within reach. The only question that left is, will we choose to perceive it? Transcendence, this famous expression, beauty will save the world, is not only a poetic provocation or an abstract philosophical remark, it is, in reality, an invitation, an offer to halt, to reflect, and to reconsider the way we perceive beauty in our lives. Dostoevsky urges us to perceive beauty not as a mere aesthetic pleasure, but as something far deeper, a universal and redeeming force capable of altering even the bleakest circumstances. In a world where pessimism often overshadows optimism, he pushes us to perceive beauty as an act of resistance, a force that may transform our perception and, ultimately, our reality. When Dostoevsky developed characters like Prince Mishkin in The Idiot, he was not intending to portray a vision of unattainable perfection. Instead, he was depicting something deeply human, flawed yet striving. Mishkin is gentle but frail, hopeful yet vulnerable. He embodies the continual fight within each of us to traverse the conflicts between light and darkness, between virtue and weakness. In his innocence there is wisdom, and in his pain there is great meaning. Like Mishkin, we are all called to pursue beauty, not as an escape from reality, but as a force that has the capacity to transform it from inside. But what does this transition genuinely mean? It is not about superficial aesthetics or an idealized vision of beauty. Perhaps Dostoevsky anticipated something that we frequently overlook, that beauty itself is an act of rebellion. It stands against cynicism, against indifference, against the rising nihilism that threatens to rob our existence of purpose. Beauty, when accepted fully, is not passive, it is active, a living force that may inspire change. It appears through creativity, through kindness, through acts of compassion and understanding. It has the capacity to confront the fragmentation of the modern world, delivering a sense of wholeness where there seems to be only division. Today, as we navigate crises of every kind, social, emotional, and spiritual, Dostoevsky's message feels more pertinent than ever. In a time when uncertainty looms big and meaning frequently feels distant, he reminds us that beauty is not simply a luxury, it is a necessity. It is a common thread that ties us to what is timeless, to what transcends the ephemeral struggles of our individual lives. But more than that, Dostoevsky's insight does not just inspire passive adoration of beauty. It calls us to action. It asks us not to withdraw from the world, but to engage in its reconstruction, to fill it with more goodness, more empathy, and more meaning. Beauty is not an escape, it is a responsibility. So, the question that persists is both simple and profound. Where do you discover beauty today? It is not just in majestic landscapes or paintings hanging in museums. It is in the quiet moments of human connection, in the resilience of the human spirit, in the modest but major acts of kindness that brighten another's day. Perhaps, as Dostoevsky felt, beauty is not something remote or unattainable. It is within reach, waiting to be seen, ready to be welcomed. And choosing to realize it might just be the first step, not only in rescuing the world, but in saving yourself.